CBRE invests in technology so that we can help you invest in your future. Find out more about how we can help you at cbre.com.
Welcome to the Silicon Slopes Town Hall today. We are joined by Finicity co-founder Steve Smith. How are you?
Great to be here.
Yes, we are in August.
August.
And
wow.
It's only 5,000 degrees outside, so we're under a heat dome.
Where did the year go?
Yes, we were just talking about that. It may have existed, or it was the longest year so far ever.
Yeah.
TBD.
Depends how you want to look at it.
So you've had an interesting year, and we'll get to that. But before we get there, tell us a little bit about Finicity, when it was founded, why you founded it, how you've built the company up to this point.
Yeah, so we founded the company in 2000, and really at that time, you know, the internet was kind of a new thing. We're still trying to figure out a few things about the power of the internet and what that meant. But having come from a mobile computing background, it was really about, are there ways to empower consumers with information that would actually enhance their life? And finance was an area that was something that was really interesting to me. And helping consumers do a better job of managing their finances was kind of a cross-section between those two things. So the concept was, is there a way for us actually to put better data in the hands of consumers where they need it and when they need it, so they can make more informed spending decisions and actually live a better financial life. And that's what we set out to do. That's what we set out to accomplish. We absolutely knew nothing about connecting to banks and actually collecting data or doing anything in a mobile context with respect to personal finance. But, you know, that's the fun, I guess, of the journey when you think back on it.
Yeah, so lots evolved, and I guess a lot of industries have obviously been upended with the internet and connectivity and stuff, but banking, at least for me, seems like one that has been really disrupted, especially talking to grandparents or parents. It was like a checkbook that they made a note in that they had spent that check, and now you show them like, oh, you can track this and forecast this, and there's a little graph, and they just think it's amazing. And all of that really wasn't possible without a bunch of companies and people building that.
Yeah, I think, you know, when you think about disruption, you think about industries that have been disrupted significantly. You take a look at finances, and still we have checking accounts, standard checking accounts. We have standard savings accounts. We still have, you know, standard, credit card accounts. Largely, a lot of things still work the same, except that we've got better information, better data at our fingertips, and better tools for looking at that information, that data. So when we think about, you know, gaining access to that data, and then some of the things that you can start looking at from a true open banking perspective, I think we're really just on the cusp of significant changes within the financial services industry, things that will really mix it up. And that's really exciting to be a part of that.
So what is open banking?
Well, I mean, let's just start with the word open, right? It really means that anything that's available to you is open to you, right? Any information, any data that relates to you personally, your transactions, your accounts, your history, your the way you spend money, kind of the choices you make from a savings or an investing perspective. All of that data is housed and has always been housed somewhere, right? And so the concept of tearing down the walled gardens around that data that has traditionally been the financial institution, and making that data truly available to you when you need it, how you need it, and in the best context for, driving the best solutions for you is really the idea of open banking. So how do we gain access to it, and what can we do when we truly gain access, when the consumer permissions that access?
Okay. Yeah, so you guys have several products now. How did you guys come about, through ideation, building the products? Was it something that you guys could tell the data indicated would be popular? Was it something you guys wanted or thought would be fair to the consumers? How do you guys create your new product lines?
Well, obviously, having been around for a couple of decades, there were one or two pivots in our life. So we did make a few adjustments along the way. But I have to say that in every case, they were kind of measured and based on where we saw the industry going and opportunities and problems that we're trying to solve. Opportunities we're trying to take advantage of, problems we're trying to solve in the industry. So for the first several years, we're really focused specifically on the consumer, and I think that helped us really understand, really put the consumer at the heart of the conversation, because open banking is really all about the consumer in the center of that discussion. And so for the first several years, we were truly focused on building better solutions for the consumer, putting more data in their hands, creating better context for them. And what we learned is that there are all kinds of opportunities out there that may not just be a personal financial management solution, but could be involved in, better payment solutions or, more context around lending decisions or information that can actually be used by the bank better to make better credit decisions or to provide better credit for a larger number of people. And so as we just started to evaluate opportunities in the market and have discussions with partners at the time and others that we were having conversations with, we learned about some of these problems. Did a bunch of research, worked with a number of folks in the industry, and started to settle on kind of the way we believed open banking would be perpetuated and where the use cases, what types of use cases existed and where we could potentially add the most value in driving some of those use cases. And that's how we landed on credit decisioning as being one of the key drivers, because there are 50 million people in the US that have thin file or no credit history. And if you can use open banking to truly make a difference there, then people who can afford credit and can't get access to it obviously are going to be helped by that. Those that maybe have access to too much credit, it perhaps puts tools in the hands of in their hands and in the hands of those who are providing credit to make better lending decisions. And so we really started to partner along those lines. And then when you think about the friction associated with getting a loan, whether it's something as simple as a personal loan or a credit card or a mortgage, right? You think about how to digitize that process and truly make it easy, simple, quick. We focused a lot of attention there while we're still building out, solutions for personal financial management and payment solutions as well.
Yeah, credit's really impactful, right? You might ignore it till you actually need it. I'm reading a book about Sam Houston and Davy Crockett and the Alamo and that war with Mexico, and the Texans they wanted more Americans to move in so they could have a hedge. They could offer very few things. It's quite hot and arid. There's Indians and disease and all of that, but you can have land for really cheap. And then the settlers will be like, oh, I don't have any money. Like, oh, okay, well then we'll give you credit for your farm or your cattle ranch or your little wheat farm. And I can just imagine them trying to figure out, like, should we just give it to everyone? Should we just give it to half? These are all like second chance people too, who are a little rough around the edges. But even 160 years ago, it was an important thing, even on the frontier of Texas. So it's been a busy year with COVID for everyone. But then you also had another experience. So let's jump into that with the MasterCard acquisition. So I'll be hitting you with a bunch of questions, but let's start at Genesis. Who called who? How did this whole thing happen? Was it percolating for years? Did it happen very quick? What were the early days of the deal?
Yeah, for a company like Finicity, we obviously have investors that have been with us for a while and a couple of, really strong strategic investors as well. And so, that at some point you're going to have a liquidity event of some type, and so that's never too far away from the thinking. But honestly, for us, our core business was growing by and has continued to grow by triple digits year over year, and the opportunities continue to avail themselves to grow, for at that pace for the next several years, we believe. And so, it's not something that we really set out to do. It's not. We didn't say at the beginning of January, well, this year is the year. The board was very focused on growth for the business and continuing to invest in the business, but part of our mantra has always been to work closely with the industry, and so that includes the work that we've done with the Financial Data Exchange, and a number of now nearly 125 companies that have all combined together, in the Financial Data Exchange to promote principles of open banking and to actually develop standards around open banking, and that now includes Canada, who we just got an announcement over on. So we're really excited about that. But MasterCard is they're a member of the Financial Data Exchange, as are a number of other leading banks and organizations. And so, as an organization, they focus pretty significantly on standards throughout, worldwide standards throughout, the financial kind of services ecosystem. And we started having conversations with them on, just as it related to open banking and standards, early in 2019, and a few more discussions later in the year, and some kind of partnership opportunity discussions a bit further into the year that just kind of, rolled into discussions around, possibly, what does this look like? I mean, and so who called who? It's kind of been an active dialogue with so many, great companies, large companies in the industry, that they kind of stepped up and said, this is open banking is an area of significant interest for us, and we'd have interest in having a more serious dialogue around that.
Okay. So the courtship and dancing starts, and I guess from MasterCard's perspective, it's probably complex, but boiling it down for this interview would be, we can either build that or we can acquire that, and they obviously did their due diligence and thought that you guys would be a good partner or acquisition. So for those that have never experienced it, so like once it becomes semi-serious, how did that go? Because you're going to share your numbers and diligence, and with each continued good faith phase, it gets more and more serious. So without going into the details or getting into proprietary data, what was it like for you, the courtship and the dance that kept progressing?
Well, it was pretty energetic, to say the least. When we got to that place, we'd already secured representation with one of the larger investment bankers, or one of the larger investment banks in Financial Technology Partners, who's done. I mean, if you take a look at a lot of the fintech work worldwide, M&A work, and even fundraising, they've done a lot of that. And the board had made a decision kind of late in 2019 that we were going to start preparing for a Series C sometime potentially in 2000, maybe early 21. And so we'd done some interviewing of organizations to potentially work together with us, and had kind of settled on Steve McLaughlin and team, and so we kind of already had a bit of that in place, and when conversations got a bit more serious, we had some additional discussions with them, and decided that we would retain them, and so they came alongside us in that process, and as we started, it was just fairly active. I guess when there's a fair bit of dancing, obviously, and until you get to a more serious place where you're talking about numbers But at some point you have to share, you have to share what you've got, and we did that together with FT, and they had bankers that they had already acquired to think about this.
So you've got your bankers, and MasterCard's got theirs, and it's not their first rodeo. Obviously, these bankers, that's what they do. How involved were you and your executives in the negotiation or answering kind of complicated questions? Did you want them to carry the freight, or was it a joint effort?
It was very much a joint effort. It was very, very much a partnership all the way along. There are a lot of details that go into a conversation like that, and it was super important to Nick and I to be very focused on what does this potentially look like? What's the outcome? Like, you've got a team, you've got a culture, you've got a lot of good things going, and a lot of things can get messed up pretty quick in a bad deal, right? So being focused on what that outcome is, and just making sure that we knew who it was that we were engaging with at the most senior level within the organization. So, there were a fair number of meetings, and this is all interesting because you think about this in a pandemic, right? So this all happens, kind of early enough in the year that we're actually still traveling. So, some trips for them out here, us out there, really sitting around a table and getting to know each other, and then getting more serious about, what a deal construct looks like.
Yeah. And so for you, you've obviously done some M&A, but this is a big one with a really big partner and acquirer. What were some of the things that you thought you knew about M&A that you now know were incorrect, or what were you actually accurate on?
Well, I would just say a deal is a deal, and whether it's a smaller or mid-sized deal or a larger deal, or the legal construct is largely the same, and a lot of the discussions are the same. The difference is that if it's kind of in the larger size, they're going to throw a lot of resources at it. And that was the big surprise. I think that I shouldn't have been surprised, but by a lot of resources, when you count the number of attorneys that are involved across the deal, it's breathtaking. Honestly, it's breathtaking, and that's okay, right? Because it's a big deal, but you've got to keep pace with that. You have to move at the pace, and the amount of work. It was extraordinary, and then to think about the fact that we haven't had a face-to-face meeting since before we finalized the construct. Like, the entire deal was done virtually, right? We're talking about the entire diligence process was done on Zoom meetings and documents, right? It's to me that's just extraordinary. So to be able to do a deal of that size and to do it, given the kind of circumstances that we've all been in the middle of, is it really is kind of extraordinary to look back on.
Yeah. I imagine it wasn't a lot of fun, and I imagine there was a long series of long days there for you. So for you and your co-founder and your executive team, what were some of the key parts of the deal for going forward? Because sometimes you get the money and you sell off into the sunset. Sometimes you stay and help. There's all sorts of things that can happen for a founding CEO.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what you're most interested in, at least what I was most interested in, is the stakeholders, right? So this has to be something that's great for the shareholders. It's got to be, ideally something that's great for all stakeholders, including all of our team members, and all the reasons they joined the business and wanted to be a part of this thing that's growing at the pace that it's growing. You don't want to make an announcement and suddenly have that reality change. And so the culture of the acquiring business, how does it fit with your culture? A couple of things that were super important to us were, I'm 30 years in Utah Tech, right? So building tech successes in Utah is super important, and being able to continue to do that is super important. So, are we going to stay? Are they going to invest in the state of Utah? Do they like it here? Those were all super important questions. And then things like, what do they think about our business? Is it a bolt-on to some other piece of their business, or are we a platform for, future expansion growth for them strategically? Are we solving some kind of a major problem or strategic opportunity for them, and being able to go down that list of questions and say, yep, check on that, check on that, check on that, check on that, check on that. These guys, they're focused on the right things. They seem to understand the industry, and they seem to be moving and investing in the right way. And this seems to be absolutely a strategic, growth-oriented acquisition for them. Then, it starts to meet the mark. And if it's great for the shareholders, then I think that's that's kind of a summary of the decision-making criteria for me.
Gotcha. So you alluded to it earlier, but ordinarily in bigger deals like this, you'd play a lot of golf or go eat several dozen meals with the acquiring company and kind of get to know each other face to face and see how they interact with waiters and all of that. Like, it kind of factors in a lot of the times. So you were looking at them on a computer screen the whole time. Was there any points where you're like, oh man, I'd just love to maybe kick this down the road a few months until maybe we could meet in person, or were you content with what you had as far as coordination and communication?
Thankfully, we'd had enough time early on to have some really high quality meetings and discussions, and so from there, it was just a reaffirmation every time somebody got on the screen, and we were, just are they acting the way you would expect them to act based upon what you saw before? And the answer was always yes, and they're an extraordinary company. They truly are.
Yeah. So this is kind of a funny question. If you don't want to answer, you don't have to. But you work with all sorts of financial partners. Is your credit card full of credit cards from different companies, or is it now just MasterCard?
That's funny. That is a funny question. Let me just say this. I'm really glad that I have my private banking MasterCard from KeyBank that I could have at top of wallet. Let's just say that.
Perfect.
And I felt a little bit bad for Nick when over dinner he pulled out the American Express.
Yeah.
That was a funny moment. It was a funny moment.
Yeah, I can imagine there's been some M&As where the guy showed up in the wrong car or was wearing the wrong blazer or something. So you alluded to this as well, but these data sharing agreements, there was a recent one with TD Bank. What's the impetus behind those, and how do those work in conjunction with your business?
So really, in the U.S., if you think about open banking in the U.S., it's about developing the standards that everybody can use to plug in for direct API access to data from a financial institution, and the security protocols around that. And then in the absence of a regulatory framework that says, banks, you must do this and this and this, the bilateral agreement is really something that identifies, how we share liability and the data types and elements that they're going to make available. And it's a commitment on the part of the bank to continue to do that long into the future and to meet certain, service level agreements around that bilateral. So for us, it really puts us in a position where we've got a very strong, legal, relationship with the bank that will allow us to maintain, high quality uptime, high quality data, and the data elements that are necessary for us to take care of all of our customers with respect to all these use cases that we talk about. So, at least in the U.S. right now, and in Canada, it's a bilateral agreement is kind of the structure, and it's really become a bit of a standardized agreement now that we negotiate and just work through a few nuances as it relates to each institution.
Yeah, so I imagine it's just a legion of people working on that, and a small army of lawyers. And
it's actually quite remarkable.
Yeah.
One thing that I will say is that this is again relatively nascent for the industry. So banks are having to learn a lot about open banking and how to actually join an organization like the Financial Data Exchange, stand up an API server, plug it in the right way, make sure the right data types and elements are available, make sure that they've plugged in the right kind of security protocols and frameworks. And so lots of learning on their side. And we've moved as rapidly as the banks really have been able to move in terms of signing bilateral agreements and standing these up.
Yeah, it is very impressive. 99.99% of people buy their bananas and swipe their card, have zero idea of the millions of moving parts and the trillions of hours that went into enabling that.
It really is
it's a wild industry. So you're doing a big merger and acquisition, and then you've got the pandemic, so the chief executive has to handle both, right? We won't harp on it. This will be the only COVID question, but how did you guys deal with the pandemic from a stay-at-home, work from home, work from the office? How did you deal with the human side of it all during the last 4 or 5 months?
We really, by early March, when it was clear that we needed to be prepared to take action and to be proactive, we started, doing trials for work from home, and that includes our team in India, where we have a number of team members. As an executive team, we define two primary objectives with respect to the pandemic. Number one, keep our team members and their families safe. We're in so much as that is possible. And number two, make sure that we don't drop the ball for our customers. We want to make sure that not only are we meeting their SLAs, but we're also exceeding them, and we're also moving quickly to stand up the new services that they desperately need when they're all looking at having to be much more digital, right? So our growth rate has been substantial over this period of time, as you can imagine, from we got to be digital perspective. And so for us to really be in a position where, we get to keep our team members safe and their families, and we have to flex to keep up with the growing demand. It's been a crazy 6-7 months, but I have to say, within 2 weeks, we were 100% working from home. And for about 6 to 8 weeks, we just kept that as our mantra. Right now is not a time to try to figure it out. If we're able to work from home, let's work from home. Let's not take any risks that are unnecessary. And so we ran very quickly, just like every other company did out there. I'm not sure that we did anything that was any different than anybody else, but fortunately we have a great team that was highly focused and dedicated to it. And then we just started doing things like daily stand-ups with every single team in the company. Weekly updates across the executive team. Just the concern we had is, when you're in the office, you can do a lot of communicating. When you're no longer in the office and you think about having, 500, independent offices that are now having to be connected digitally to accomplish the same thing, we kind of felt like communication. You just couldn't over-communicate. You have to be all in with that. And now we're in a place where we've defined a protocol for if you want to come back to the office, you can. It's voluntary. But if you come back to the office, you have to operate within a protocol. You have to get approvals, and obviously we don't have very many working from the office yet. So it's still, and we made a few modifications in the office. And I think, as I talk to other CEOs, we're pretty much following the the script that's kind of been developed, and I think most of us are comfortable operating from right now. What's different is that, and this was true for me up till about 6 or 8 weeks ago. To me, it was always just a short term, we're going to get through this 90 days and then we're going to flip the switch and we're all going to be working the way that we were before. What's changed is it's very clear to me now, as the fall conference season gets canceled, we're in, evaluating fall sports and school and, the complexity of all of that. And then you start thinking about, then we're into the flu season and spring, and it's pretty clear that we're going to be operating the way we're operating for at least another year. And I don't see, and others kind of in my position really don't see, that kind of coming back to normal until, a year from fall, the September, October time, a year from now. So yeah. I think we're kind of in this mode, and thankfully, as an organization, we're able to operate just fine.
Yeah, that's good. What are the next 5 years for you and Finicity, and then any predictions on the finance industry, fintech, or banking as a whole over the next half decade?
Yeah, I think just as I said before, we're just right at the beginning of some, I think, what will be major changes in the financial services industry. I truly believe that what's only been available for, a lucky few is going to be available for the masses, and I believe that data is ultimately going to make the difference in economies. Financial data will make the difference in economies from a financial inclusion perspective, and so you're gonna see just a wave of services available to people who couldn't have them or afford them before, and now have full access to them, and there's no reason why they shouldn't, right? You're going to see better credit decisioning. You're going to see more instant credit decisioning. You're going to see digital identity play a significant role in the convergence of consumer permissioned data and access and control, and I think that you're also going to see a continued heightened focus on consumer data rights and data right protection, especially in financial services that truly will put the consumer in the center. So whereas before, a world of big data lakes, I think we're moving more to a consumer-controlled, consumer-centric model that allows the consumer to identify who they are and allows them to identify what they want and what they need and get full access to that. So that means that a lot of services that depend on big data lakes and the gathering of data in certain ways are going to have see wholesale changes in the way you go about things, and that could be everything from the credit industry to underwriting and loans and banking services, wealth management services. So a lot there. As far as Finicity goes, and open banking, I just you couldn't be in a kind of a more fun time in an industry. You think about the size of the financial services industry. You think about the convergence of technology into financial services, and it just doesn't get any more exciting for me, at least, to think about being a part of that and helping to be a bit of a change agent, and then to think about doing that together with an organization the size of MasterCard, their worldwide footprint, and being able to leverage that in unique and interesting ways that really helps you, as an organization grow into open banking and services is kind of fun and exciting as well. So I think it's a very bright future for Finicity and team. Absolutely.
Well, congrats on the MasterCard deal. That's a great accomplishment, and most entrepreneurs never get to that point where there's the big happy day at the end. So congrats to you and your team. That's a big deal. So we're excited for your growth and continued prosperity, and appreciate you taking the time today to come tell us about that deal and some of your other insights. So Steve Smith, CEO of Finicity, appreciate it.
It's always great to mix it up with you, Garrett. Thanks.
CBRE is pleased to partner with Silicon Slopes in providing you with this town hall event. Our company first landed in Utah the year that I was born, 1984. And since then, it's been one of our top priorities to partner with really great community organizations. We admire the impressive contributions that Silicon Slopes makes to our great state. As a director of global advisory and transaction services, our group focuses on helping companies grow their real estate footprint nationally and globally. In doing so, we take into account your company's goals, reducing cost, scaling quickly, maintaining flexibility in your space, or maybe just finding the markets with the very best talent. It's never been more important and also more difficult than now to develop the right real estate plan globally. And yet, tech companies reach out to CBRE as the global gold standard in developing their real estate plans and carrying out their real estate needs globally. We help you physically take your company to the world. 2/3 of the globe is covered by water, and the other third is covered by CBRE. We invest in technology so that we can help you invest in your future. Find out more about how we can help you at cbre.com.